Is the moment too big for Brock Purdy? We're going to get into that. We're going to break down the 49ers Seahawks matchup coming up on Saturday and much more on tonight's Hammerhead Show. Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. It is Thursday night. This is an different episode of the Hammerhead Show. Normally we do this on Monday night, but as you know, it's been a little rainy out in California, and that affected our ability to go, for me to at least go streaming, live streaming that is. I was playing in the stream in my front yard that happened to be my street. But other than that, all things are good. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing much better. I mean, it rains all the time up here in Portland, so I think we're just used to it. We have systems in place that move the water along. And while we get a lot of rain, it doesn't come down in buckets. But, man, the picture that you sent along of your street where you were like, I'm going to need to get some sandbags was a very telling tale of just how crazy the weather has been there in California. And obviously that is going to play a factor in the game coming up. I know we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah, that was the rain on Monday was not expected at all for me. I drove to work in bad weather, but I thought it was going to clear up in the afternoon, and I started to come home, and oh my gosh, it was. You remember that old, like it was an old windshield wiper commercial, and they're driving that old car down the road, and they're having to stick their window out, their head out the window to see because the windshield wipers aren't working, and the guy cuts off his tie to try to make it work and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what I felt like when I was driving home on Monday night, and then I turned the corner to my house. And I'm driving down a river. Car was, almost underwater as I'm driving down there, and I pull up, and yeah, we got the sandbag set up, and then we thought we were good, and then about 1:30 in the morning, the police came by and we had to evacuate, and we were lucky we had somewhere to go. But hey, it all worked out, and it was all clear by the next day, and we were able to come home, and I went out to practice yesterday, and I got to see the Flyers getting ready for this big game. So it's a good time.
Nice. And you came out of it unscathed. So that means it's safe to laugh about, safe to look at as a fun adventure that happened. That's the important part.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Kim says, deep water disables cars. And that was one of the main things that I was, we could have, the way it all played out, we could have stayed here, not even evacuated. We would have been fine. But, not knowing it and didn't want to get stuck here with our cars getting ruined and everything else like that. So we did what we had to do. And the good part, like you said, everybody was safe and healthy, and it was basically a family reunion at one of the relatives' house here in town. There was about 15 of us at one point in the house, or about 13, I guess. Holed up for the day, and we had a good time and made the best of it. So that's good. And then, like I said, I got to get out to Santa Clara yesterday for practice. The weather wasn't much better yesterday in Santa Clara. I don't think I've been. I don't think I've been that wet, not being in a shower in a very long time. I got more wet watching practice yesterday than I got wet during our trip to Chicago for opening week.
Man, that is something, because that was ridiculous rain in Chicago. I mean, it was coming down in absolute buckets. So if that's the type of rain that was happening where you are, it doesn't surprise me that it was flooding and that we're dealing with some serious weather issues. Since you were out at the practice field yesterday, how did that practice field feel? How did it look? Did it seem impacted by the weather all week?
It was wet, but it seemed like it was holding up pretty good. And good. Nobody was slipping. I think there was one guy that had slipped, but I wasn't on that side of the field at the time. I just heard them talking about it after practice. But it was wet, and the one thing about it, when you have wet conditions like that, the last two practices now I've been to have been wet practices, and so for me, it's all about wanting to see how the quarterback can throw in a wet ball, right? How is this going to impact them? And right. So Brock Purdy he throws a really nice tight spiral in the rain, which is a big positive. That if you can spin it in the rain, might take my hat off to you, because that's a hard ball to throw when it's wet like that, especially how hard the NFL makes their footballs, and yesterday in particular, his ability to put it on the body of his receivers was impressive. So
That's a positive sign. And even though Brock is on the smaller side of the spectrum as far as height goes, I've never heard any questions about hand size. That's usually goes hand in hand with, hey, he's undersized, he has small hands, and then when you get into a range situation, you worry about grip. I've not heard that criticism of Brock.
No, he has big hands. I think his hands are actually bigger than Trey Lance's. At least somebody put that out there. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to hand size, but somebody mentioned that, and maybe there's something to that, because he definitely was able to spin it pretty well. You know, his arm, we know what his arm is, and the weather, you know, affects that a little bit. But he's put, you know, the ability to get the ball out quick and put the ball on people. That's been positive. So we'll get into Brock Purdy a little bit more, because that's what we will. You know, we want to talk a lot about him tonight. But before we get there, what are your thoughts? And do you have any? Is there, when you look at this game against Seattle, you know, we've seen this team now twice this season. This is the third time. Yep. So there's not anything that we probably haven't talked about already this season. But what are some of the key matchups to you heading into this game?
To me, I mean, there are a lot of key matchups, but the first thing I want to comment about is, you know, it is difficult to beat a team 3 times in a row. There is a unique challenge that comes with that. And I look at the Seattle Seahawks, and they are definitely not of the same caliber as the San Francisco 49ers. The stats bear that out. And they are a division opponent. They know us very well. Pete Carroll is a clever head coach who's going to put them in the best position to win. I, myself, and many other pundits had the Seattle Seahawks hovering in that 5-12 range, 6-11, seeing this as a lost season for them because of the fact that they traded away Russell Wilson and seemed to be in a rebuild mode. I believe that they will get hyped up for this one. There's, you know, no bigger shot than knocking out a division opponent who is favored to probably win the NFC, even though they're not the number 1 seed. Nothing gets much sweeter than that as far as the sort of get in, win one in the playoffs, maybe not be able to advance, maybe not be a serious enough contender to make it to the Super Bowl, but do some damage. So I worry about that. And it's actually kept me from booking a flight down to Santa Clara just yet. I'm still on the fence, Jack. I want to know your opinion. I go into this. I was telling the guy at my favorite sandwich shop here in Portland today, having a conversation. He's a Seahawks fan, of course. I'm freaking surrounded by him up here. And I'm like, listen, you have nothing to lose. He's like, yep. If we beat you guys, I'm going to talk a bunch of trash. But like, if we lose, it's expected. And that's what this game is. It's expected that the 49ers win. So if I go and I fly down there, it feels like if we win, it'll be like, okay, good. We checked that box. If we lose, which this is the NFL, anything can happen on any given Sunday, it will feel horrific. And that would be a terrible flight home. So I'm really on the fence about this one and still weighing my options. What do you think? What are your 2 cents, Jack?
My 2 cents on if you should come to the game or not?
Yes.
Oh, Rob. You know, I didn't say it's good, and we didn't get a chance. I don't know if we talked about after the Raider game much, but because after that Raider game, I was glad they won for you, because
me too.
But given the way that game plowed out, I don't know, man. They won, but shoot, they only won by 3 against the Raiders team that got blown out the next week by Kansas City. That's a tough one, you know. No, I'm giving you a hard time. Hey, you showing up doesn't change the game. We know that.
No,
but it's interesting because, like the last 2 on here say, right, real quick, you're talking about this matchup and so on. And Raphael 5629ers, member of the Toolbox, says Purdy is the first 49er rookie quarterback to start a playoff game.
Yeah.
And E. Kim right behind him says Seattle kept it competitive last game against Brock. Well, 1 second. Now, it's interesting because Kyle Shanahan has faced off against Pete Carroll in the past in this situation with a rookie quarterback in the playoffs, in the first round of the playoffs. Did that back in 2012 when he had RG3 out in Washington. And they ended up losing that game 24-14 to Seattle that day. But that rookie quarterback, they jumped out to a 14-0 lead at the end of the first quarter. If they can duplicate that kind of effort on Saturday, this is a 49ers win. They don't get up by 2 scores, and they're not going to get up by 2 scores against Seattle and lose this game. But there are a lot of concerns. There's a lot of, the 49ers are the better team. There's no doubt about it. There's a reason why they've played each other twice, and Seattle scored 1 touchdown on offense. Why they scored 13 total points on offense, all that coming in the game at home. The only thing I think that causes most people who, like myself, who maybe have a little bit of caution going into this game, is the weather. The weather is the equalizer. Saying that, though, I think if you're looking at a wet, rainy game, it would favor the team that normally plays on grass compared to the team that normally plays on turf. I think even though they play, in wet conditions up there, so the wet ball isn't maybe as much of an issue for Seattle, it's different playing in the rain on AstroTurf or this field turf stuff that they have now compared to grass. What do you think?
I think it absolutely is a difference. I would say that playing in the weather is an advantage for Seattle there, but totally agree that the weather is going to even the playing field. Also agree with your stipulation that the 49ers are the better team in here. That's my feeling. So my first matchup to watch here has to do very little with the rosters and very much to do with the leaders of men that will be getting those rosters ready to play on Saturday. And that is Coach Shanahan versus Coach Carroll. That it will be, big brain against big brain in this one. And I wonder who's going to have their team better prepared to play, to come out and actually lay it out all out on the line. Because historically speaking, I would give the nod to Pete Carroll in that department. He seems to be able to muster up this sort of underdog mentality for his teams, wherein they aren't expected to win. They come in, you see them lay it on the line, physically speaking. And that's unquestionable. When men, professional men in the NFL are willing to lay their bodies on the line at maximum velocity, maximum force, they are bought into the mission of the team. And conversely, you actually have instances in prior seasons where you've questioned whether or not you specifically, I and other pundits have questioned whether or not Kyle Shanahan has gotten his teams to perform at the level that they should. So there's no question in my mind that he is an intelligent coach, that he's an amazing offensive play designer. The aspect to leadership of getting his players ready to go, making sure that they don't take a game too lightly, that's something to watch for me. And I think it will be apparent from the first couple of series.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just there's some interesting matchups as I go through it. There's some things about this game that are a little bit different than either of the other two, especially the last one. One of the matchups that I wanted to run by you is, it's good that they're going to be getting their left guard back. It looks like Aaron Banks is going to be active and ready to play.
Nice.
The 49ers are as healthy right now as they've been all season long. There's only two players that I think that started week one that aren't going to be starting this game. The quarterback who hasn't played for 15 games this season. And then Emmanuel Mosley, who's been out since early in the season as well. So they've been on this run without these guys. So the core of their team that has been around is going to be back. And Aaron Banks is one of those. Spencer Burford is at right guard, I think, is someone who has struggled maybe a little bit more in the last couple of weeks as he's been getting all of the reps compared to rotating with Daniel Brunskill. The offensive line coach kind of even mentioned a couple of the sacks from Sunday being a matter of some breakdowns, and looking at the film, I would say at least one of those would have been on the right guard there. But the matchup is Al Woods versus the interior of this 49ers offensive line. Al Woods had 3 tackles for loss in that first game at Levi Stadium. Didn't play in the game up at Seattle. I think that's a big one for this because especially if it's wet, you've got to be able to get some push and move these guys off. And I think if he's able to sit in there and disrupt the offense, it could be a rough one for them.
That really could. I mean, you look at it compounding, the compounding effect of being able to minimize or stop the Niners on early downs if they go conservative, which, again, Kyle Shanahan has sometimes shown himself to do, especially in a game where it is, hey, you're heavily favored. You're the better team. You should be able to win. You don't need to get cute. It's raining. Minimize the chance for turnovers and things of that nature. Just beat them with sound fundamental football. So if you're going to do that and you're going to be running up the middle, if you're getting stopped or held on those initial downs, now you're looking at 3rd and long, and you have a rookie quarterback, first playoff game ever in the rain, attempting to make those passes on 3rd and long. I think that's a phenomenal matchup to call out. And I would say this, I'd be more worried about that matchup if Jimmy Garoppolo were behind center. I really have, in my humble opinion, Jimmy Garoppolo struggles most, and it's fair to say that many quarterbacks do struggle with this, but Jimmy Garoppolo in particular struggles the most with interior pressure. You look back against the Kansas City Chiefs, against any team that has that very dominant nose tackle. Again, tough for anyone to deal with, but certain quarterbacks seem to have a better ability to slide around within the pocket and keep their eyes downfield. I feel like Brock Purdy, although young in his career, has already shown us that he's just a little bit better in that category than Jimmy Garoppolo, perhaps more comparable to Garoppolo before the injury. I hear a lot of people talk about how his mobility changed at that point. I'm not going to argue that, but I will say I feel better about it because of Purdy.
Yeah, the thing with Purdy that's interesting, and well, let's just transition. Let's talk about him, because I think Brock Purdy is the guy that everybody wants to hear about anyway, and that's what we titled the show about, right? Is he ready for the moment? So we might as well just get into it. And I agree with you. I agree with you from the standpoint of what you said about how good a job that Brock Purdy does with movement within the pocket. That's one of the things that he does a very good job of. And I'm guilty of saying that he reminds me a little bit of Garoppolo from 2017. And I kind of stand by that a little bit, but at the same time I don't, because I think he's a better athlete than Jimmy Garoppolo was. Even at his best, Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have the speed that we've seen from Brock Purdy. That, like, just on Sunday, for example, against Arizona, where they get some pressure and he gets out to the left side and he takes off for 13 yards and runs out of bounds. Like, we never saw that kind of athleticism from Jimmy Garoppolo. And then you add in, some of his elements of being able to just move in the pocket, his ability with his eyes to keep people out of the throwing lanes. The other thing is, his ability to change arm slots. There was a screen pass that I saw, and somebody pointed out on Twitter, and I saw it on the game film, but where he actually has to, instead of throwing it from up here, he needs to bring it down here because the defensive end is in the way. So it's got to come out quick, and he's got to kind of wing it sidearmed and everything. And he puts it on Debo for a gain of 8. There's just so many things that he does at a really high level. And the interesting part about this game is we're asking if he's ready for the moment, because he's a rookie, but he's going up against a quarterback who's never been in a situation either, and he's over 30. So it's not like Geno Smith has been here either.
That's a great point. And nothing really can prepare you for playing in that moment until you play in that moment. So while Geno Smith has considerably more experience in the NFL, and you would think that he's a little bit cooler coming into this, you don't know until the lights come on. And metaphorically speaking, 1:30 game, lights won't be coming on unless it's real stormy there. Then the lights may come on. But for Brock Purdy, I have to say, I've been putting this out there, each week, that each new week is, in fact, a new test for Brock Purdy. But he's been passing all of them with flying colors. And to me, each one becomes less critical to my evaluation of Brock Purdy, because I feel as though I have more and more of an accurate impression of his strengths, of what he's able to do, and any limitations that he may have. And what I've seen to this point gives me a lot of hope that he's going to have success in the playoffs. And much of that has to do with the fact of the roster that surrounds him. When you do have the number one defense in the league, that is going to benefit you as a quarterback. He can truly say to himself, I'm just a piece within this bigger machine. I don't have to do it all. I don't have to force the ball in there every time. I can take an incompletion on a critical third down and trust that my defense is going to give me another shot at it. I can trust that we have a good enough run game and a good enough defense that if we just keep this thing close, we'll probably get into the second half and wear down the opponent, going into that stat of teams against the Niners losing the next week after playing the 49ers. That I really do feel our defense, the way in which we play teams, wore them down physically. And as long as we stay in this one, I believe that we'll be able to do that again. So all those benefit Brock Purdy. But if we look at the individual, he has said and done all the right things to prove to us that he is capable of this moment. He seems to get the media speak of, hey, don't give them anything to hang their hat on. Don't give the opposing teams anything as far as locker room material. And just give praise to those around you. Don't take all the glory on yourself as a quarterback. Yeah, you're going to get all the attention, but defer that to the rest of your team. Brock seems to do that well, and it gives me the impression that he's cool and calm under the pressure.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I'm glad that you brought up everything that you did, because you brought up a lot of stuff there, and like even in terms of how how good this defense is, and how good the talent is around them, a lot of those things. And how you doing, the Buddha? I see you over there. I see you too, Black 59 Razor. But when one of the questions I was asked earlier in the week, and I wanted to talk about this with you on Monday if we were going to get a chance to talk, but we didn't, was this team has gone out and they're scoring 33 plus points a game over the last 5-6 weeks, right? With Brock Purdy. And with Jimmy Garoppolo, they were at about 26. I'm talking about the time after Christian McCaffrey got here.
Right.
When you look at that and you're saying, well, they're getting 7 points more a game with Brock Purdy as compared to Jimmy Garoppolo. Is there anything? I mean, I have some specifics that I can point to that I think are playing a big role in it, but I was wondering if what you have, and I was wondering if maybe you're thinking that the defense is playing a role, or what is it? Why do you think this team is scoring so many more points right now with Purdy as compared to Garoppolo?
I do think that it has more to do with outside factors than a direct comparison of Purdy to Garoppolo. Not to say that there isn't that direct comparison and that some of those points should not be attributed to Brock, because I believe some of them should. And for the reasons that we just laid out, that ability to move around within the pocket has shown itself multiple times. The ability to scramble around the edge has shown itself multiple times. And each of those has led to a drive that's ended in a touchdown. So it's easy to see points that are associated with Brock Purdy. But then you look at the rest of the team and the way everything has come together. It is fair to assume that while Christian McCaffrey was a stud when he arrived, that it still was a growing process, that him getting acclimated to the offense, other players getting acclimated to how it freed them up to make additional plays, took some time. So my assumption is we would have seen that same ramp up to a lesser degree had we continued with Jimmy Garoppolo. On the defensive side of the ball, I absolutely believe that has contributed to the success of the offense. That has much more to do, in my book, with just the natural progression of health for the San Francisco 49ers. You called it out that, hey, they are the healthiest they have been all season. I believe I read today that the only two people that didn't practice or that are on the injury report are Jimmy Garoppolo and Ambry Thomas, right, as expected not to play. And so that's a pretty healthy freaking team at this point. That defense is giving us additional bites at the apple.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the point that I think you're right on there. I think you look at the last 3 weeks in particular, and this defense has been so good. Defense and special teams has been so good at setting up this offense. I would say maybe not so much against the Raiders, even though the defense did have 2 turnovers that led directly to 6 points. But the game before that, at home against Washington on the 24th, was a game, the 49ers, I think, scored 17 or 20 points off of turnovers and special teams, where 20 points where they didn't have to go more than 35 yards to score 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. Last week it was 17 because of a couple of interceptions and a fumble. I believe it was the third one. Yeah, it was a fumble by the quarterback, right? So this defense is setting the offense up. And I think the other point, though, too, with it is you don't want to – I think you do need to give Brock Purdy some credit, because you look at what he's been doing, and he has been more efficient in the red zone than Jimmy Garoppolo. He has been a better – he has a higher touchdown percentage in the red zone, a higher percentage of actually getting the 7 instead of the 3. So that's a part of it too. I think that you look at it and say he's doing better at this point. Now, let's just this is a step back. We have a super chat I want to hit on, and I love the name here. Maybe he's from up in your neck of the woods. We got Big Duck McGee here, and he's got a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Duck. And he says, Brock is a third-string quarterback, picked last in the draft. How can you say the Hawks have nothing to lose? Geno is a veteran, not Brock.
That's absolutely true. I will say this, that someone saying the Seahawks have nothing to lose, I do believe that, but those words actually came from a Seahawks fan that I was talking to today. And I look at it as Vegas favors us by what I believe the line is 9.5 at this point. So it is not expected to be a close game. Those typically mean that, hey, the Seahawks are the clear underdog in this one. I think this is a bit of a stretch and more of a 49er, like searching for a storyline that allows us to be a bit of an underdog. But when you look at the complete rosters, third string quarterback or not, when you compare these two teams, to me, there's just a huge talent differential, and it favors the Niners heavily.
Yeah, I want to answer this. You just said something, though, that I want to touch on as well. But first off, before that, Duck, I'm going to say that the reason that the Seahawks don't have anything to lose compared to the Flyers is that you have a team there that is seventh. They're the lowest seed in the playoffs. If they do anything, it's all nobody expects them to do anything. There's nothing expected of the Seattle Seahawks. So in that standpoint, if they do anything in terms of win this game, if they even keep this game close, in some ways that's as much of a win for them as anything else. And for me, and this kind of goes back to what you said. I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but it jarred my memory. Is if you go back to this last time these two teams played in Seattle, that was a 21-13 victory. But the 49ers, if we go back to the points being given up, how the defense is setting up the offense, that goes back to the Seattle game. Because if you don't get the fumble that you return down to the inside the 5-yard line right before halftime, you're going in at half with that being a 7-3 or 7-6 ball game instead of 14-3. That completely changes the complexion. Not only that, but on that series, right before you get the fumble by the running back for Seattle that gets taken down and then they score a touchdown, you have a throw over the middle from Brock Purdy that hits the safety right in his chest that he drops on your side of the field. The 49ers have been living on the positive side of things for a long time right here. And, I think this game has the potential to be way closer than anybody thinks. I put out a comment on Twitter yesterday that people didn't get it because they decided that they wanted to take it again, as a Trey versus Brock tweet. But the question was the last time the 49ers were in a situation like this. Now, I know for everybody that tweeted at me that, 6 inches is different than 6 feet. Well, no kidding. But this is the last time the 49ers played in a wet game where it was ugly throughout the game or wet throughout the game was week 1 in Chicago when the 49ers scored 10 points against the Bears, right? I know that they didn't have Christian McCaffrey back then. They didn't have George Kittle. Awesome. Do they score more than 10 points this week? That was my question. That's what I asked. I wasn't making a comment about anything. I'm asking the question. How many points did they score this time around? I'll ask you, Rob. How many points do you think they can match? Now, remember, they scored 21 up in Seattle this last time these two teams played. That touchdown I just mentioned was because they gave them the ball on the doorstep because of a fumble recovery.
Yeah.
And then, here it was 27. What do you think?
I believe that this one ends up not quite as close. So I do have the 49ers scoring above that. But I believe throughout this contest, for the most part, we will be looking at a 1-score game. And it won't be until the end, much like I said, that the 49ers wear people down. I do think that we will tilt it a little bit. Not a whole lot. It's going to be closer than most people believe.
I think so, too. I find it hard. I got a lot of people telling me they were going to score in the 30s. I find it very difficult to believe that this 49er team, in the weather conditions that they're going to have, is going to score 30.
Yeah.
Unless you have the Seattle Seahawks out there coughing the ball up all over the place.
Right.
Because that's how they've gotten the 30. The Raiders defense sucks. It's just, that's part of it, right? In that Raiders game, they were going up and down the field, and the Raiders defense just stinks. I went out and watched the Raiders play last Saturday, and they're as bad in person as they look on TV. But everybody else, it's been because of turnovers and things like that. And if Seattle doesn't turn the ball over in this game, or if they only turn it over once, this is going to be a game that's going to be very, very tight. I think it's a division opponent. It's one that you beat handily once. The second time you didn't. I think this is going to be a tight game.
Yeah, I've got the 49ers being able to put up points in the low 20s, but I had to go lower than a couple of writers I was reading in The Athletic, where, they predicted 27, 26 points for the 49ers. I think it's going to be a little bit less than that, and I think it will have something to do with turnovers. If it's a clean game, no turnovers, I could easily see this thing in the teens.
See, I like Lake City Fresh. He came in here and he just jogged my memory. He said, man, you're an old fart. You need to remember this one. And he's right. It rained in Chicago too, and Mexico too, against the Cards. We did well. Hey, hey, every once in a while, this is what, I'm not against telling you guys that you're flat out wrong when we're having these discussions. So when you come in here and you tell me that, that's actually a good point. It was raining in Mexico City. I don't know if it rained throughout the game, but it definitely was raining hard in the beginning. So maybe those are the kind of weather conditions that the Flyers deal with, and maybe you're right. Maybe they go out and they the Cardinals, the Seahawks aren't the Cardinals, but maybe the weather stuff is a little overblown. Who knows?
I hope so. I hope it's overblown, because it sure feels like it takes a game that otherwise should have been wide open and closes it up nicely.
And then we have BMF Ranger. Thank you for your super chat. And he says Hawks average 21.7, Niners average 33, Niners win. I don't think you're going to see either of these teams get to their average. I just don't. But I think it's going to be – I do believe the 49ers are the better team. I do believe that they're going to win. I think the only way that they lose this game is if Brock Purdy isn't ready for the moment and he turns the ball over. Not more than, and that's not maybe just once, it's multiple times. You go back and I did it last night with just farting around, and I was looking at some stuff. I wanted to see what's going on. And since 1980, when you look at the quarterbacks that have started for the Flyers making their first playoff start as Niners, Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jeff Garcia, Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick, and Garoppolo in 2019. In each of those instances, each quarterback turned the ball over at least once. None of them played a clean game. Alex Smith didn't throw any interceptions, but he had a lost fumble. But Montana, Young, Garcia, Cap, and we know Jimmy Garoppolo threw a pick in the playoffs. That's what he does. So, for the most part, that's a stat that it's a little scary, because if he does turn the ball over, I think that can be an issue for the 49ers. In a game like this, especially tough opponent.
I mean, what I'm hearing there, Jack, is there's a way for Purdy to get into the 49ers record book ahead of Joe Montana, Steve Young, Alex Smith, Jeff Garcia. Yes, he can earn himself that number one spot in one category as a rookie.
Hey, he's already there, right? He's already beat Montana and Young. He's first 49ers quarterback to win 5 straight as a rookie, to throw, 2 touchdown passes, at least two touchdown passes 5 games in a row, or 6 games in a row now it is. 5 starts in a row, but 6 games in a row. So, hey, there's a lot of positives to it. And it sounds to me like both of us are of the belief that we think that Brock Purdy is going to be ready for the moment. Am I correct on that?
I do. He has shown me everything he can prior to game day. Now, clearly, when we wake up game day, and whether I'm there at the stadium as you are, or whether I'm watching on TV, I'm going to be looking at Brock Purdy. I'm going to want to see calm in his face. I'm going to want to see a sense of poise from him. And that first couple of drives is really going to tell us the story. But to this point, he's shown me everything that he can, that he's going to be a more prepared rookie than your average individual headed out there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think when you look at this game, Brock Purdy needs to hold on to the ball. The 49ers as a whole need to hold on to the ball, because when you look at these two teams, both teams are really good when they win the turnover battle. I don't think that's all that different when you look at in the NFL. I think most teams win more often than not when they win the turnover battle. You have something you wanted to throw in there?
No, I was just going to. Sorry, I was reading the comments and got myself caught up like that. It looked like I had a hand up, but I did not. Okay,
I thought there was something over there that you wanted to pull up. But I mean, you look at this matchup, and the one thing for me, especially if it's wet, and the one thing that the 49ers have been able to do is they've been able to shut down the run game for Seattle. I think that's one of the biggest pieces to this game is if Kenneth Walker gets going, like what we saw in Vegas with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs got going, and once he got going, it opened up everything else. So he didn't go over 100 yards, but he had the best day against the 49ers of any running back this year, and we saw how many points Vegas was able to put up as a result. I think if Kenneth Walker, I think he is the key. If Kenneth Walker gets rolling in this game and they get some momentum with him, I think it opens up everything else and really makes this a tough challenge for the 49ers defense.
That's a huge one because it allows Seattle to do everything based off of that. They open up the play action. They're no longer in 3rd and longs. They're minimizing the 49ers pass rush. Yeah, getting Walker going would be huge in this one. I also think for the 49ers that they can't fall into the trap of getting too physical. This is going to be a physical game. This is going to be an angry game. This is going to be a game where potentially there are a few flags thrown like there were the last time around. I'm thrilled to watch it. It makes for great television, but you can't get sucked too far into that. You have to be the physical team, but you also have to be the smart team. You can't be the team that acts second and gets the flags thrown on them. In a close game, turnovers, penalties, these things can matter in a win or a loss. And the Niners have to be smart about that. They are the better team. Again, I will drive that home over and over and over again. But to me, playing smart, playing physical is a big one. All right, let me go for another matchup to watch here, though. And I'm going to say that it's Geno Smith versus Nick Bosa and the 49ers Gold Rush. I like that name too much not to use it. I don't care that we've used it for our cheerleaders. It fits so well for the rush. But last couple of games, Seattle was trying the short passing game, right? But we were too much for him still. I saw this stat. David Lombardi put it out, 45 total pressures in the 2 games against Seattle to their 11. So just a ridiculous amount of pressure from the defensive line. I think if we can continue to put that type of pressure on Geno Smith, regardless of whether we get home or not, that's going to bode well.
I think so as well. I definitely think that's a good one. Because it is Nick Bosa against Geno Smith or Nick Bosa versus the defense, this offensive line for Seattle, either however you want to put it. I do think that if they can get some pressure, and that's the 49ers formula, right? Is they're going to stop the run and they're going to put pressure on the quarterback, and that's kind of what makes everybody else on the defense so good is the pressure they put on them. When they don't get pressure on the opposing quarterbacks, that's when we've seen them struggle. And I think you're right on that. One thing that came to mind, and this isn't necessarily what you about said, but this is just something in general that popped to me last week was, the 49ers went through that stretch in Atlanta and at home against Kansas City where they gave up 21 points in Atlanta and they got blown out, big numbers against KC. Well, they went through that stretch again just a couple of weeks ago against Washington and then the Raiders. But if you remember when that stretch earlier in the year, then I think it was like an 8-game stretch where they did not give up over 19 points. And so maybe I think that was a little bit of a wake-up call, that game against Washington, the game against the Raiders, a little bit of a wake-up call for this defense to play at their top level and really be able to get after, what they need to do. Because they played really good last week. I know they gave up the touchdown right at the beginning, which made the numbers on the pass defense skewed throughout. But they gave up 80 yards passing on the first 2 plays. They gave up 100 that was within the first minute of the game. They gave up 80 yards passing. Over the next 44 minutes, they gave up 100. So I think this is a defense that's pretty solid. Obviously, that's why they're one of the top in the league. But I wrote a column that posted just a little bit ago on for the Press Democrat talking about the reasons that the 49ers have been so hot lately. Really pointing back to all the moves that have happened to get this team to where they are. And one of the biggest moves, I think, or one of the biggest things that happened for this team in a way that you wouldn't think about it, but the injury to Jimmy Ward, I think that injury to Jimmy Ward in training camp might have been a blessing in disguise for this team.
Interesting.
If Jimmy Ward doesn't get injured, Tayshaun Gibson isn't on this team.
Right.
Tayshaun Gibson is a ball hawking safety. Now, I'm not trying to knock Jimmy Ward.
No.
But him and then the way that he played at such a high level. So when Jimmy Ward has to come back, he's no longer your starting free safety. Now you're playing him in the nickel. He struggled a little bit here and there, but he's been better than the rookie that started the first 2 games there. He's been better than Deommodore Lenoir when Deommodore Lenoir started in there. He's been better than he's an upgrade over what they had in K'Wan Williams from 19 through 21.
Wow.
With the way that he's been playing. His pass coverage has been so good this year in that area. I think that an injury to a player actually turned out to be a big positive for the way that this defense was created. And we're seeing it continue because I think that helps with why one of the reasons if they stop Kenneth Williams on Saturday, it's going to be because you're going to see Jimmy Ward making some big stops.
That's a great call out. And it is rare that an injury leads to a better 11 on the field in that way, where the player comes back and now you've shifted them to another position. And it turns out, oh, wait, the person that replaced them is holding it down in a way that's better, but it allowed that individual to come back and take over a position that wasn't being played quite as well. Get your best 11 on the field is what I'm saying in that jumbled jargon of words that I just threw out there before. But it is absolutely has worked to the 49ers' benefit. And kudos to Jimmy Ward for embracing the role. At first, it felt like it was a little prickly in, hey, I'm the starter. I'm coming back. I'm the most vested veteran on this defense. Turned out to be the right move. He's bought in, and it reflects on DeMeco Ryans as a leader of men to me, to sell Jimmy Ward on that, to get his buy-in, and to have the cojones, if you will, to make that move, to say, yeah, my veteran safety is coming back. I'm going with the guy that we got off of the street week 1.
Yeah, I agree. Harold Murillo, good to have you on board. And he said, but I do think it's a testament to what DeMeco Ryans is doing on that defensive side. I think it's also a testament to what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have put together here, and the team that they put together. I remember Jimmy Ward didn't seem to be too happy about it, but he's definitely seems to have embraced it as the season's gone along, and definitely seems like he's in a better place. Really for the most part over the entire second half of the season since the Rams game, the second one. And so it's a positive, and this whole team and the way they're put together is so good. But again, I think the run game is a big piece of it. Charvarius Ward against DK Metcalf. I think that's a big one as well. He matched up really well with them, took him away for the most part in that game in Seattle. And they've really done a good job against him. I think it's going to be a big matchup again on Saturday, even if the weather's not perfect.
Yeah, and that was a situation where you had Mooney shadowing DK for the vast majority of those snaps. Is that what you would expect to see in this one again?
I think so. I think that makes a lot of sense for the 49ers to go in that direction. You get your best guy. If he can travel with them, let him travel, and vice versa with Deommodore Lenoir. Deommodore Lenoir is a guy who I think he's just been crushed these last 2 weeks by people, but I think this poor guy, he was playing at a decent level. He's nowhere near as bad. He's the Mike McGlinchey on the defensive side, where he's getting, makes a bad play every once in a while, and he's getting, ripped. I think he's been, for the most part, has been a pretty solid corner out there. His passer rating allowed. He gave first touchdown of the season was last week on that flea flicker, and his passer rating up into that point was right around the same number as Charvarius Ward when it comes to since he's been moved back to the outside. So, man, this whole thing is an interesting one for me. I think this is a game the 49ers should win, but there's a lot of interesting matchups.
I agree. This one absolutely fascinates me. And I do think, to the Deommodore Lenoir point, it felt very intentional the last couple of weeks of getting him some exposure, right? Throwing him on Davante Adams, because you could have taken the same approach against Las Vegas as you did against Seattle when you were trying to clinch the division. You could have had Mooney Ward shadowing Davante Adams like he shadowed DK Metcalf, as I too would expect him to shadow DK Metcalf on Saturday. I think that was a conscious decision. No, we are going to give Deommodore Lenoir as many chances, as many bites at the apple as we can, so that he gets those reps. Younger player gets those reps. He has the ability to forget when he's beaten, so it's not like you're damaging his confidence. He's going up against potentially the best wide receiver in the league in Davante Adams. So I wonder if that will benefit him. I agree that the Mooney Ward versus DK Metcalf is the premier matchup to watch at wide receiver. That's the physical one where I believe that Mooney is in DK's head, because DK got flagged for the not unnecessary roughness, whatever it was that he got flagged for. I think it was an unnecessary roughness that he got, or unsportsmanlike conduct. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that again, because DK does play with a lot of emotion. Mooney seems to be one of those, like, cool-headed trash talkers, and that can be the worst for a hothead, right? So like, he's got the ability to back it up. He's a physical dude, so he's all up in your face the entire game, and it seems like he may be talking a little trash while he's doing it. Eventually, that typically aggravates people. It reminds me a bit of Sherman on Crabtree back in the day. Eventually, you would see Crabtree lose it a little bit, and I don't think that gives you the advantage. So in this matchup, I expect the 49ers to have the edge. I actually take the other side of Seattle's wide receiver combo as a matchup to watch. Tyler Lockett in the slot. I don't think, much like last game, I think he'll be matched up primarily against Jimmy Ward there because of what percentage Tyler does play in the slot. But when he is matched up against Diamador Lenore, that feels like an interesting matchup to watch, because Tyler Lockett to me is just sneaky good, deceptive good. His ability to find the holes in the defense and sit down, they feel like a real weapon. The 49ers have to, his ability to do that feels like a real weapon the 49ers have to be cognizant of, because I have that faith that Mooney Ward is going to be able to handle DK Metcalf. I think the more serious matchup is how are we going to contain Tyler Lockett?
I agree. I think, Lockett's a heck of a receiver as well. They've done a pretty good job against him so far this season. I don't think his numbers have been all that great against the 49ers. He's been limited. He's not really the deep threat. I think that's why people don't focus on him as much.
Right.
But it's going to be, again, that's another one to watch for, because if they can get it to him, if they have the time to hit him, he can make you pay too. Because I've always liked Lockett. I think he's of the two, I really think he's the better receiver for, overall receiver, all around receiver. He's not the big, strong guy that Metcalf is, but he makes all the little plays. So we'll see. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Real quick, want to hit the super chat from Jaguayo. He says, which team has the advantage of rainy, if it's a rainy, sloppy field? We talked about this a little bit ago. And you asked that question, Jaguayo, and some other people in the comment section are talking about how rainy it's going to be. Well, I'm gonna go back. I'm not the weatherman, but I accurately predicted that it was not going to rain at the game last week. I mentioned that early in the week. I said weatherman Jack says it's, according to his forecasting tool, says it's going to be sunny during the game. And it was. Right now for Saturday, it's looking like it's going to be an inch of rain in Santa Clara. That inch of rain primarily coming through until about 11 o'clock. So that actually plays out well. If you look at the numbers in that 11 o'clock hour, looking at it, that 11 o'clock hour is going to be just under a quarter of an inch, 0.15. But the heavy rain is going to be there around 10 o'clock in the morning. It's looking at about a quarter of an inch of rain at around 10 a.m. in the morning. From 10 to 11, that's going to be about a quarter of an inch. That's a ton of water. They're going to have the tarp on the field. They painted the end zones nice and red for us this week because it's playoff time. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But
yes.
It's going to be covered. The field's going to be wet. And as I said earlier, Jaguayo, if it's a wet and rainy, sloppy field, I think it favors the 49ers. Seattle plays on the turf most of the time, and I think if any of these teams are going to struggle with it, I would say the team that plays on turf is probably going to struggle a little bit more than that team that plays and practices on grass every day.
I like your logic there. I'll take the other side of it because I believe that the weather will shrink this game. It will make it closer. It will make it harder to put up points. And ipso facto, I think that favors Seattle, because if you take away the weather, I believe the Niners do come close to dropping 30 on Seattle, if not more. With the weather, it's going to be tougher to do. I think that makes it a little bit more challenging for San Francisco. I agree with the sloppiness that you're talking about there for a team that is used to playing on that turf versus one that practices on grass. But the lack of rain preparation that the 49ers have and being out there in Chicago and watching that game, I just think that this one's going to be a little bit closer, and I think that keeps Seattle in it.
I think it's going to be a lot closer than. I don't think it's going to be the blowout that some people might expect, right. And I think it is the rain that's going to help that be the case. Now, we've talked a lot about this game, and I'm just going to I want to veer off the track a little bit here. This show might go off the rails in the last 5 minutes, but hey, that's kind of what we do here with Jack, because that's the way he is sometimes. But there was a tweet that went out yesterday by somebody who does podcasts, and it was talking about the Indianapolis Colts and how their process goes, and the Colts do something very similar to the 49ers. The 49ers have what they call gold helmet guys when they get into the draft. And those gold helmet guys are the guys that really fit the mold of what they're looking for. And as a football player, as a person, the guys that they really want. So they have all the names on their draft board, and they put gold helmets next to those guys that really stand out. And in Indianapolis, they put little blue helmets or blue dots or blue cars, whatever, next to them. And the person that was pointing this out also mentioned that Trey Lance was one of those blue card guys for the Colts back in 2021, and obviously that started up the conversation of do you trade Trey Lance after this season? Do you even listen to that conversation? And I want to ask you, Rob, what do you think if the Indianapolis Colts come to you and they say, "Hey, we want to talk to you about maybe making a trade for Trey Lance"? Do you pick up the phone?
I think you always have to pick up the phone. You always have to pick up the phone. You got to hear what the offer is, because if it's stupid, if it's just absurd, then you entertain it. But I think it has to be stupid in order for you to entertain it in this case. This season has highlighted why it's important for the 49ers to have a deep quarterback room. And if you're not going to attempt to re-sign Jimmy Garoppolo, which I would assume that the 49ers are not, that era is over and someone will make Jimmy Garoppolo a starting quarterback for their team after this season. Obviously, the Niners cannot franchise tag him. You now have two rookie quarterbacks still on their rookie deals, and you could roll forward with that. You have a very cost-controlled quarterback room, even with the fact that Lance was the third overall pick, and it is a very high salary relative to had he been picked in the mid-teens, end of the first round, it would be even cheaper. But just the fact that both of them are on that cheap contract adds up to be one of the lower quarterback cost rooms in the NFL. And you can use that to your advantage. Now, if you go ahead and send Lance out for a couple of draft picks, or I'm sure on Twitter, the name of Buckner may have been thrown about a little bit because fans are still upset about that. I get the emotion behind it. I even get the logic of saying, hey, this is potentially a horrible situation to be in where you go into the offseason and now you have a competition between a rookie who has earned himself some favor coming in and winning at the end of the year. Obviously, what he does in the playoffs will determine just how much favor he has within the locker room. But the presumed starter at the beginning of the year, who we traded a significant number of assets to be able to select. I understand it being viewed as sort of that cancerous locker room situation that you want to avoid if you can get reasonable compensation. But we said the same thing about bringing Jimmy Garoppolo back on this team. I said the same thing about bringing Jimmy Garoppolo back onto this team, and I was wrong about that. Thank God we had Jimmy Garoppolo when we did, because it created the bridge until we did get to Purdy. So it's one of those situations. To me, you try and keep as much talent in the building as possible. I think keeping Lance on the team does that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, for me, I think the only way that you have that conversation, the only way that you move off of him is if they say, we will give you number 4. If they are going to give you the number 4 pick in the draft, you pull the trigger on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But other than that, it's a no-go. If it's anything other than 4, because even at 4, even though the 49ers might not need a guy at number 4 and, whatever, I think you take 4 and you probably trade back and you kind of build up some things, because you're going to need to have draft pick, more guys that come from the draft and those types of things eventually on this team, or maybe make a shot at a right tackle, in the earlier part of the draft, because if you can maybe, instead of paying Mike McGlinchey $12 million next year, pay, a first round draft pick, you take a number 6, 8, whatever, rookie salary cap money, that's a better deal for the 49ers in the long run. But again, the only way for me that you move off of Trey Lance is if you're getting a high 1. Otherwise, you keep it. And I'm basing this just off of history with the 49ers. And I think that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have learned their lesson and the need to have multiple guys at the quarterback position. If anything, this year shows you again that they understand it, because they started with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy was going to be the guy that eventually was going to be the backup. They were able to get the thing done with Jimmy Garoppolo. So you're able to go from Lance to Garoppolo to Purdy at the end of the year. and win this thing out. Which if it wasn't, if imagine if they had kept Nate Sudfeld and it was Nate Sudfeld right now that was playing quarterback for the 49ers or what have you. I mean, this is would be tough. So I think the Lance stuff is more. We're going to have a lot of discussions about this during the offseason, what you do with Trey Lance. But I think the only way you make a move off of him is if you're getting a 1, and it's got to be a high one. It can't be end of round 1. It's got to be like the Colts at 4 or somebody else, at 10 or what have you.
I'm with you on getting the deal done then and trading back at least a couple of slots. You pick up a second rounder, you pick up a second and a fourth, whatever you can do, because the Niners are low on picks and they do need to replenish the roster. They will have some tough decisions to make for sure.
Yeah. I don't know, we'll see. It's going to be a lot of fun. Two over here, he tells me that it's a bad idea to Trey Lance, and if Brock not pan out, we are screwed. If you've watched Brock Purdy, Brock Purdy isn't doing this by mistake. If you watch Brock Purdy, he's not playing well because the other teams are screwing up or whatever. He's playing well because he's a good quarterback. He does all the little things well. I know. People, as the saying once went, I think it was Mark McGuire said this one time, or there was an old commercial back in the 90s. Chicks dig the long ball, right? Yeah, and we see the same thing when it comes to football, and it's one of the reasons why people like Trey Lance so much is because he throws the deep ball and he throws it well. And the thing is, the deep ball is cool and all, but if you have a super efficient quarterback that can hit those deep balls every once in a while, but can also complete everything underneath and can move with his legs and can make all of the throws that you require, you take that. I have not seen the consistency out of Trey Lance at any point that we've seen out of Brock Purdy for 6 weeks in a row now. I haven't seen that from him. And not to say that it won't be that way when he comes back next year and he has George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey to work with, but we'll see. It'll be a very interesting conversation.
Yes, it will. I think that the noticeable difference of, Brock Purdy, 4-year starter versus Lance with so few reps, that consistency feels directly correlated to that experience in my mind. And not to say that, to your point, that Lance couldn't get there, but where we are right now, Brock Purdy feels like he's already operating this offense at that elite level.
Yeah. And Ryan P says if the team moves off Lance, it'll be a huge mistake. Everyone's talking Purdy is immune to injury or losing games. Trey is the future. Trey's been the future for 2 years. He's going to, by the time next season comes around, he will have started 5 games in 3 seasons, going back to his last year in North Dakota State. Full potential, though. That's what you're betting on, and I know that's the deal that you're betting on. You're hoping that he's the future. That's what it is. And according to STCR, I'm a Lance hatter. I am. I dig his hats. I think they're great. He has a strong hat game. I definitely like the SF one that he put together. So he definitely Jack is definitely a strong Lance hatter. Yeah, and I don't hate one darn guy. Who hates any of these guys? I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. If you look on Twitter, there's plenty of guys that hate these guys.
Oh, there's a lot of hate. You named a couple of players that get some hate. Mike McGlinchey definitely gets some hate.
Yeah, and to be honest, there are people that do that with Trey Lance as well.
Yes.
I know that.
Yes.
I think that I think Lance is going to be an interesting case. We're going to see how this thing works out. He was very inconsistent during training camp. And if you look at everybody who watched training camp, they all said he was inconsistent. The head coach said he was inconsistent. So I'm not going to spin it to make you guys feel better about it, but we'll see what happens. I'm excited right now. I got to tell you, it's Thursday and I cannot wait for Saturday morning so I can get in my car and drive to Santa Clara for this playoff game. Cause it's been a long, Rob, the last time I saw a 49ers playoff game, I think it was when they defeated the New York Giants in the come from behind game at Candlestick.
Whoa. Are you kidding me? That was the last one. Jack, this is phenomenal. I'm so happy that you are going to be there on Saturday. That makes me so much more at ease about my decision of whether to go or not, knowing that you're going to be there ending that streak. I love it, man.
Yeah, because after that they went downhill, right? So yeah, I had my
And
only had my
now we
season
know
tickets for
why,
next
because
year.
you weren't there, Jack. We could have in 2011, we'd have won it all. I mean, we need you there, Jack. That's what's going to change this year.
It's all my fault. And here's the thing: the best way for this whole thing to play out, I think, is we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But 49ers win on Saturday.
Yeah,
I don't really care what happens in the games on Sunday. It would be nice to see Minnesota be the team that comes here and
right.
But man, I just want to see there be some way that Philadelphia gets knocked off before the championship game, because that would be phenomenal to have 3 straight at Levi's to run the table. Actually, it ended up being 4 straight. That would be and the way that this whole season's gone for the Flyers with the way that their home schedule was set up. I mean, imagine playing throughout for a month straight at home. It's possible.
It'd be phenomenal. And then you'd be at all those home games, and I'd need to start up a GoFundMe to get you a Super Bowl ticket, because we would need that same luck going into. I mean, we're knocking on wood here because we're one game at a time. We're playing Seattle this week. Jack and I both believe it's going to be a little bit tougher than a lot of folks out there say. But hey, we're getting that win. Let's take it one game at a time. We can dream. We can dream a little bit.
Absolutely, we can. Really quick, Rob, what's your final score prediction?
My final score prediction, 23-10 Niners. Like I said, I think it's going to be a 1-score game up until the end. Then I do think we tack on another touchdown, thus making it a 13-point victory for the Niners. Low 20s for the score.
Okay. I'm saying 20, 49ers 20, or Eagles, or who the hell are they playing? Seahawks. 49ers 20, Seahawks 16.
It's one of those birds, Eagles, Seahawks, they both fly. It's pretty much the same.
See, there you go. So there you have it. It is 49ers 20, Seahawks 16 for me. You said 23 to 13.
23 to 10.
23 to 10. We'll find out who is right. It's going to be a lot of fun. Rob, you got some stuff coming up over in your channel?
Yes, 8:30 tonight. I'm going to be going live with Randon. Between Two Beards is happening. 8:30, tune in tonight. And then tomorrow at 5 p.m., going to be doing a call-in show on the channel, getting the sneakerheads on there. So any sneakerheads calling in, and anyone that wants to tune in and drop their comments live in the chat to be part of the dialogue. Tonight at 8:30, tomorrow at 5, and then some post-game celebration, assuming things go well.
Hopefully it's celebration. And then Raphael 5629ers, he comes in, he says it's going to be 31-17. Armchair QB says 24-13. 49ers for life, 27-10. And then Raphael 569ers doing the good deed for me and says like and subscribe, everybody. Yes, please do. Get over to Rob's channel at Rob Schuh here on Twitter, on YouTube. It's in the comments, below in the description of the show, not in the chatter in the comment section, but in the description. Man, I have not done a stream all week and it is showing. But no, I'm looking forward to this game on Saturday. Everybody check out Rob's channel, hit like and subscribe before you leave here. What's going on?
Dabuda has a question for us in the super chat, just dropped in. It's a competition that we may have to make happen at some point here, Jack.
Better route runner, Jack or Rob? I'm pretty sure. I think this is an easy one. I give up. I think Rob's the better route runner. He can run the route. I'll hit him because I think
you could be my quarterback. You can hit me on a dime, buddy.
Yeah, I could. I can throw the ball. Brock Purdy is pretty good, but I can show him a couple things.
And also, if the question was who does a better MC Hammer dance, also going to give the nod to my friend Jack Hammer on that one.
You've seen my MC Hammer dance. It's not even the MC Hammer dance. It's the Jack Hammer dance is what it is.
It's just hammer time. It just is hammer time.
That's right. It is. It just happens to be that was around the same time when I was in high school. So I got the hammer dance down. And then we got Keith Murphy with another one. He says Purdy is definitely ready for the moment. Don't know if he's ready for the rain though. Thoughts? Keith, I will say that I think he's ready for the rain. Watched him in practice last week in the rain, threw the ball well. I thought he was even better throwing in the rain during practice on Wednesday. That was the one full speed practice that they went through. Kyle Shanahan even mentioned that he thought he looked good that day. So I do think he's ready for the rain.
I think so too. And I got to give the nod to Mike Thompson for the Rob has 2 left feet. Jack wins comments playing off of the left shoe and all that. Just next level comedy going on here. References that many people who watch the video won't get, but making me chuckle. And I appreciate it.
There you go. Yeah. I 2 left feet, 2 left shoes. Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, got to do it.
Go check out Rob's channel. It's going to be a fun show over there. Make sure you like and subscribe in there. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that little bell notification before you leave here. I'm going to be back tomorrow with I'll be doing a show with Rohan. It's a double one of those double dips where you can watch it on either of our channels. I'm going to ask you to watch it on mine because you guys subscribe to me and you like me. And who can, this, I even got my red on today. I'm living large. So hit it up, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Thanks everybody for checking it out. And we will be back with you on Monday. Until then, as Rob always likes to say, cheers, everybody.
Faithful.
Cheers, faithful. Come on, Jack. Get it together. Come on. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button.